Thank you. Yes, my name is Marilyn Balcombe, and I am the president and CEO of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce and a great fan of Montgomery history. And it's so great to be with you all today. And I'm also pleased to introduce this session on the Cider Barrel. As many of you know, Germantown is one of the county's great historic communities with a long, rich history. And as a longtime resident of Germantown, I can say that the Cider Barrel is one of our great historic icons, having a long history in our community. With us today is historian Susan Soderberg to tell us more about the history of the Cider Barrel. And I also have to say that Ms. Soderberg is also a great asset in our community. Without a doubt, she's one of the most knowledgeable Germantown historians, and we like to say she literally wrote the book on Germantown. She cares very deeply about our great community, and it's a pleasure to introduce her. It's also very exciting to see that the Cider Barrel is once again going to become an important part of our local economy. Laura Richman took on the great challenge of renovating the Cider Barrel, and once we all get back to normal, whatever that is, she will be restoring the Cider Barrel to its rightful place in our community, selling local cider, baked goods, and locally made products. Throughout this pandemic, our Chamber of Commerce has emphasized the importance of shopping local. The Cider Barrel is a great example of a local company, a local entrepreneur supporting local products, and we as a community have to do our part to make the new Cider Barrel a great success. There are brief bios of both Ms. Soderberg and Ms. Richman in your programs. I hope you enjoy the program, and I look forward to seeing all of you at the ribbon cutting when it's safe and healthy to do so. So ladies, take it away.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
You're good.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Sure, many of you are familiar with the iconic Cider Barrel that you see here, whether you've visited it in person or most recently on Facebook. This historic building is much more than a passing beam, though. It is a landmark of the Germantown community. It is a unique example of novelty roadside architecture, and it's an important part of Germantown's history. And the history of the Cider Barrel begins with the Baker family, important figures of the early 20th century Germantown. Now, the Baker family first came to Germantown, as you can see, in 1883. Daniel Baker was a professor and dean at a college in Caroline County. And when he retired, he moved here with his wife and children, his teenage children. And but he died in 1891 and left the whole beautiful house that he had built here. The old house is on the left, and the new house, as you can see, is much bigger. That was built by Daniel. So Daniel Jr. inherited the estate, and he kept the house there with his wife, Henrietta, but he became a high-powered criminal lawyer in DC, and he spent most of his time there. They built a house there. They would come back to this house in Germantown for holidays and to visit with their sisters. He served at one time, Daniel did, as U.S. District Attorney. And he died in the flu epidemic of 1919. His wife, Henrietta, though, survived him and still would come back to visit her sister-in-laws occasionally. The mother of the family, Anne, died in 1911. The oldest sister, Catherine, worked for the Department of Agriculture, so she also lived down in Washington, D.C. She died in 1915. So that left Andrew, Anna, Sophie, and Louise. Andrew went to the gold rush in Klondike in 1896, where he ran a store Now, we're not sure she got any gold there, but after his return, he became quite an entrepreneur and a good businessman. He established the A.H. Baker Insurance Company in Washington, D.C., which was very prosperous and lasted long after his death. He was the wealthy man in Germantown and a co-founder of the Germantown Bank. But he had as a hobby horticulture. He planted their whole acreage with exotic trees and plants, formal English garden and a rose garden. They had a reflecting pool. And then he had large acreage dedicated to apples, trees, and peach trees. He had a cider house and a distillery. So he made apple cider in the cider house and peach brandy in the distillery. Neither Andrew nor his sisters ever married. The sisters, who lived long after Andrew died in 1930, wore old-fashioned clothes, drove buggies way into the 20th century. Anna kept house and did charity work for St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. Louise wrote children's books, and sorry, and Sophie founded the St. Rita's Group, African American Catholics. They had a difficult time getting to St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church in Gaithersburg without transportation, so she set up a chapel for them on their property in the old cider house. So you see a picture of St. Rita here, who was the patron saint of lost causes and a hope for the impossible. Her saint day is May 22nd, and they would have a big holiday there with the spring festival. St. Rita's group would in on the property. This picture, by the way, that I have of the three ladies is not them. I get this from the internet, but it looks so much like all the stories I've heard about the three sisters, Anna, Louise, and Sophie, that I had to put it in there. So the grand old house sat unoccupied after the death of all three sisters until 1949, when Luana Dickinson purchased it and 8 acres of the original property. And she opened a nursing home called the Marylander Home of Rest. This caring facility served many people until 1976, when the new federal and state requirements caused the facility, which was unable to pay the additional construction and equipment costs that to suit the regulations, it had to close. So then the main building, there was a small fire in the original building on the left by vagrants, but it did not burn very much the building. The fire department came and put it out. But the main building was then burned down to the ground as an exercise by the fire department in 1980. And today we have townhouses on that property. Some of the one actually of the original horticultural experiment that is a Norway larch is located behind where the building is. And a lovely tree it is. Even deer find shelter under it. Now, to give you an idea of the property itself, you can see here is the railroad tracks, and the arrow is pointing to where the house was, right here. And this inset shows, you can see better the apple orchard and peach orchard, how it surrounded the property there and how large it was. So the house was located here. And on this side now we have a Germantown Elementary School, to give you a better idea of where this property is. So they had approximately 80 acres planted in the orchard, and right there in the middle of Germantown. So you can see in this slide how to make apple cider. You take the apples, you crush them up, and on the left center, you'll see a picture of a man with a small crusher and cider press that was used on farms. And then on the lower right, you can see how it was done on a more commercial basis, which is what we had at the cider barrel. So the apples would be all chewed up, and then they would be put in a press, and they pressed down till the juice all came out of them. They were not cooked in any way, so this is just the juice from the apples themselves. So Andrew Baker was an entrepreneur, as I said. So he thought it would be a good idea. Sorry, I wanted to put this slide first. When the Volstead Act came into effect, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibited the sale, use, import, or export of intoxicating beverages, it became law in 1919. And soon after the amendment, the Congress passed the Volstead Act, which defined and reinforced the amendment. And many people viewed this as a disaster, and some viewed it as a way of making money illegally. But a few, like Andrew Baker, industrious entrepreneurs, took advantage of the Volstead Act to promote a purely honest business. And so Andrew Baker thought that this would be a good way to promote his cider that is made from the apples of his orchard. This would be a way of making money. So he had a local carpenter build this barrel. And the carpenter may have been trained as a cooper, because the staves of the barrel are curved by soaking them in water and then bent and fitted together, just like with a regular barrel. So it took a lot of artistry actually to make this barrel originally. And it's all fitted together and held inside with a few beams on the inside. I'll show you a picture of the inside shortly, but you can see how it's curved there, and that in the middle, in the white part, it was painted red, white, and blue, and quite visible even today. It says it is promoting the cider as being non-alcoholic by saying, "We bow before the Volstead Act and serve it to you sweet. 'Tis better far than the old and hard, this glorious temperance treat." Being an astute businessman, Andrew Baker was not going to actually purchase the property until he knew this would be a successful venture. And we know then from this picture, it was on a little calling card. And on the back of the calling card, it has the date, which was 1922. So we know that that was the year that, at least by 1922, the cider barrel was open. And by 1926, Andrew Baker actually purchased several acres where the cider barrel sat. So it was very prosperous. Driving to the countryside was a popular pastime for city dwellers after automobiles became common, especially in the fall. People would drive up to the countryside, out in the countryside, and up to the Catoctin Mountains to view the beautiful leaves, and they still do. Halfway between Washington, D.C. and Frederick would be, and the Catoctin Mountains would be the cider barrel. So it became a favorite stopping place. Fresh cider was available by the glass or the jug from actual spouts on the sides of the barrel, on either side of the window. You could bring your glass up there and you would pay by the glass, or you would bring your own jug up there and turn on the spout and pay by the jug. So Andrew Baker at this time, which was about 1926, between 1926 and 1930, when he passed away, he built that building that you see behind the barrel. And that was to make and store cider actually on the premises. And that is part of the building today as well. Now, Minnie and Martha Underwood came in 1928, and Minnie and her husband, Chris Norton, purchased the barrel after Andrew Baker died in 1930. They were school teachers from Georgia who wanted to change of scene. Martha was a widow, and she had a son, William, who was 12 years old when they moved here. They built that house that you see on this side of the cider barrel. Right there is their house. Over here is the restaurant, which they built later in the mid-1930s. So Minnie and Christopher married Christopher Norton in 1930, and they, as I said, bought the property. They hauled apples from different orchards, and then Fred Marth built a curving stand, which you can see just here. The curving stand where they would sell the cider and the apples. They also pressed, did cider pressing on the premises. So when Christopher Norton died in 1934, Minnie and Martha continued the operation, and young Bill Cross, then 18 years of old, as the man of the family, ran the business, while the two widowed school teachers did the cooking and managed the sandwich shop. Business did so well that they soon built the fine restaurant next to the cider barrel and purchased 12 adjacent acres, where they built modern tourist cottages with toilets, lavatory, and hot showers, according to an advertising postcard. And Bill also put in a new cider press. When he went away to college, and then he worked for the Navy as a civilian mechanical engineer. He got married and moved to Bethesda in 1941, but when his mother and aunt decided to retire in 1946, he took over the barrel business once again and operated it as he had before. He made a very special way of making his own cider. When I-270 was built, taking the traffic that was so essential to the roadside market, he built a mobile home park next to the foods, to the stand, and tore down the tourist cottages and had this mobile home park instead. And this was the very first mobile home park in the county. The cider barrel was so popular, it became nationally known. So Minnie died in 1970 and Martha died in 1982. Both are buried at Neillsfield Presbyterian Church. Bill Cross, Mr. Cider Barrel, continued to operate the stand in the same tradition as when he was first introduced to Mr. Baker's cider at the age of 12, selling cider that was fresh, cold, and made on the premises. He had a secret recipe, mixing a variety of apples that he never divulged what those apples were and how many of each variety he used. He used diatomaceous earth to filter the cider, and this filtered the cider so well that inspectors said it was the clearest cider they ever tested. As a wonderful example of novelty commercial roadside architecture, it was officially designated a county historic site in 1989 and became an icon of Germantown, as it is right on Frederick Road, Route 355, just below the intersection, the south of the intersection with Route 118, Germantown Road. Many people today remember the wonderful sweet cider from that stand, and I'm one of them. They're the best cider I've ever tasted, and nothing else has ever come close. And this is said by many people. And then, as I said, the barrel became nationally known. It's here in a famous cartoon, Zippy. So the cider barrel stands for apples, and apples stand for good nutrition. But apparently, Zippy would rather eat at Chuck E. Cheese. So then Bill decided to retire and move to Florida. And so he sold the cider barrel and the property for $7 million and donated some of that money for scholarships. Even though he only operated the cider barrel in the fall and he had a regular job, the barrel was always close to his heart. He drove his Corvette and the local parades plastered with advertising for the cider barrel. In the last year of his life and living in Florida, Bill had his lawyer write a letter to the county protesting the proposal that the structure be moved, saying that it can't be moved. It would fall apart if it were moved. And he's proclaiming that it should be preserved as a historic landmark. It had already been preserved as a historic landmark, of course, but he opposed it at the time, but toward the end of his life, he changed his mind. But now the cider barrel is threatened by a proposed widening of Route 355 for the new bus rapid transit system project. We're looking forward to Laura being able to open it again. In the upper right of this slide, you can see the inside of the cider barrel and how it's held together by these vertical ribs. And this is what it looks like today with the houses behind it. There is parking behind the cider barrel up right in front of those houses. So to get to it, you'll have to make 2 right turns and get to the parking. There is reserved parking in the lot there for the cider barrel. And then there is a handicap ramp. You can just see a bit of it here. That is the end of my part of the presentation. And we greatly appreciate Montgomery History for inviting us to the conference and also to our sponsor, Montgomery Preservation. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laura to talk about the future of the cider barrel. And then I will be ready to answer your questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. This is a journey that started about 3 years ago. And the interesting part of this is similar to probably a lot of folks on the call right now. I was just driving down the street and saw it sitting there, bright light shining on it and the sunshine, and just kind of wondered, why isn't anyone doing anything with this? And then I thought, well, why can't I do something with it? It's an option that I wanted to consider. So anyway, I contacted the Germantown Historical Society and talked to Susan and wondered what was going on with it and what the process was. And she was very supportive and gave me, some nice information. And I guessing many others had asked her about this before. But then a conversation turned into action. And long story short, here we are almost 3 years later, ready to open post-COVID. And I'm going to try sharing one more time, and we'll see what we can do here. How about now?
I see that you haven't started the presentation yet. If you go to slideshow and start there, will that help?
What I might ask is, okay. We did, let's see, John.
You've stopped sharing your screen. I don't know if you know that.
Can you see it now?
No.
I'm really, really sorry, everyone. No?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go with this.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so, I told you why I wanted to open this. I was just very much wanting to see this historical landmark really, come to life again. And so I told you why, but the what we wanted to do was next. The vision here was really to bring this back to life. And the guiding principles were all about, really focusing on the community. Historical significance was paramount. Wanted to really give the opportunity to local growers and farmers to come in and sell it'd be another outlet or venue and community contact for people to use as, just really a community type of kind of a roadside stand, but really on steroids. It's not for profit for me, and we're going to look for educational and volunteering opportunities. Is it forwarding? Not. Let's do this. Okay. Okay, and the vision again is really to, did it? Yeah, it forwarded, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is to use the Cider Barrel to sell products that are sourced from the community, including, of course, apple cider, local produce, baked goods. My favorite's kettle corn, so looking forward to that, and some other items. It's going to be on a kind of a rotational basis. So anybody who wants to sell that has the right credentials can come in and talk to me, and we'll set something up. We're also planning, once it's post-COVID, to have community celebrations. There's going to be volunteer opportunities. Students can come in and help with some of the things we need to get done and gain SSL hours for their time. All right, so Susan gave you a little peek into what the before looked like. The outside of the Cider Barrel actually was in really good shape, and it's thanks to the Elms at Germantown, the Elm Street developers. They did a really nice job of painting the outside, and so it looked really, really quite nice. The inside was a little bit different story. It actually was kind of really in bad shape. There was stuff everywhere, trash, fragments of wood, some interesting historical things. The old sign was in there. It still is, actually. And it looks kind of dark and grainy here because there was no electricity. There's no light. So this is true to what I was seeing when I walked in. So it took quite a lot to kind of clean it up and restore it. And it's really thanks to a bunch of folks that came in and helped with this. We had a lot of a lot of folks that from the community that came in, Regal Paint Centers contacted us and was really wanting to just donate all the paint we needed, both for the inside and the outside, which was really fantastic. So all the paint you see now on the outside, and eventually you'll see some of the inside of the Cider Barrel, was donated by Regal Paint Centers in Germantown. And the painter here in the middle is a volunteer, and he's actually a voluntold. He's my husband, and he did a great job. I did a little bit, but he did most of it. And then the team on the right is a group from Hopkins and Porter that is a local architects, builders, and remodelers. They've been in the community for a very long time. And so the two gentlemen in the lower right, Kai Tong and Ray Hornsby, were really leading the effort here from the perspective of both just trying to figure out how to clean up the inside and get the electricity going again. And we had to rewire everything. Safety was a big deal, but then also interacting with the Montgomery County permitting offices that we needed to go through. So it was a good year of working with them, and they interface with Montgomery County permitting offices to get the right permits in place. But once that trigger was pulled, it was a pretty quick process where we were able to get it to its current state within about 6 weeks, which was really nice. So this is what it looks like now. On the left is the outside after it's been painted. On the right, we actually did install HVAC systems. So it's climate controlled, both for heat and air conditioning, depending on the season. And it's very effective. So the folks who come in to work will be comfortable. This is what it looks like in the inside now. You saw the picture on the left, which is the barrel itself looking to the window from the inside. And this part was, it needed the most work inside. We had to remove part of, there was just a lot of junk everywhere. And then the one next to it is the farm stand, where you can see on the left of that picture is the door that slides all the way open to reveal the beautiful produce and goods that we're going to sell in the barrel. The third one from the left is the main part of the inside where you know, there's the climate control up there, but we also are going to have storage, refrigeration, all of the things that you need to keep the farm stand going. And then on the right is just more storage. There's quite a bit of storage space in there, which is nice. So you might be wondering what we're going to sell. And so we have quite a bit of interest, people who are ready to roll, wondering when we're going to open. So local farmers, produce, Red Wiggler has been a huge supporter from the beginning. And it's going to be seasonally sourced. And yes, we're going to have cider. I know that's on the top of everybody's mind. And I don't make cider, and nor do I make anything. I'm not bringing in any of the goods. It's all about the community and the local produce and cider makers that are going to do it. So it'll be on you know, rotating, whoever wants to do it can do it basis. And if there's anybody who's on the line now that has an interest in selling cider or anything else, please contact me at any time. In addition to foods and drinks that are good for you, there's some things that potentially aren't as good. So there's sweets and baked goods also that are on the menu. So we have a couple of bakers and pastry chefs that are very much in there. I've already tested their wares, and that's incredibly yummy. So Specialty Bakery by Shaza, Dash of Lou, really exciting. And then we have Kettle Corn from Capital Kettle Corn that is also looking into opening in Montgomery County very soon. So very excited to have them on board. I'm still looking for somebody who has an interest in really good bread. That would be awesome to have somebody who makes fresh bread. You may have seen this nice little meme that was circulating on the internet. It was posted, I think it was 2 days ago on the MoCo show. And this is awesome. Bernie sitting by the cider barrel waiting for it to open, as all of us are, which brings me to the question of when is this going to open? And the answer is going to be dependent on widespread availability of a COVID vaccine. So I want to make sure that my family and friends and the community are safe, especially because there's going to be a lot of interest and a lot of probably traffic when this finally does open. So looking to hopefully spring. We'll see when the vaccine comes out, and I will keep everybody posted via a Facebook page, which is under the call of the, I think it's here, yeah, the Cider Barrel Revival. And you can look for the logo, which is on that page on the left there. Huge thanks to so many people here. Mentioned a few, the Germantown Historical Society, especially Susan. She's just been such a huge supporter and guide throughout this process. Craig Rice was very instrumental in moving the process along with permitting once we stalled for quite a while. So very grateful to him. The Elms at Germantown, the complex behind the Cider Barrel, very, very, very supportive all along. As well as the Elm Street developers. Hopkins and Porter that did the renovations, they did it at cost. It was an amazing amount of effort for, just doing it out of the goodness of their heart and just for materials. So huge thank you to them. And again, Regal Paint Centers, a lot of paint to do the inside and the outside, and that was all donated. My husband for painting, and then the community has been so supportive, just the outreach from social media and just walking by as we're painting and just having a chat, just been really supportive. So thank you to everybody. And that's it from me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Soderberg and Ms. Richman, for that presentation. We will now take questions from the audience using the Q&A function. There are already some in there, and I will start reading them immediately, but if you have more, please send them in and we'll get to as many as we can. So where was Balcombe located? Is question 1.
Yes, I did show that on the map, but today, if you could find the Germantown train station and you would follow the blue mark train signs, right across from the train station is the Germantown Bank, which is the Historical Society's our home. We own that building, and we're planning on making that into a museum of banking history. We're working on that right now. So if you get to that point, it would be on the other side of the road, which is now called Liberty Mill Road. Right now there are townhouses on the property. And in between the townhouses and the dentist office, which you will see right across Liberty Mill Road from the bank building, is the larch tree that I was talking about, the Norway spruce, Norway larch. So I hope you can locate it that way. It's down near the railroad tracks in old Germantown.
Okay. A question about, is the original cider recipe lost?
Yes. Ray Bollinger will tell you that. He's still around, and he was a partner with Bill Cross. And Bill never even divulged it to his partner.
Wow. do either of you have any idea of the size, the dimensions of the barrel?
The size of the barrel,
Yes.
I have it somewhere in my notes, but I know it's about 20 feet high. Is that right, Laura?
Something like that.
About
Yeah,
20
we
feet
had to
tall, I
use
think.
a
Yeah,
pretty tall ladder for painting.
yeah.
Um, has there been any resistance from the neighborhood to its reuse?
Nothing that that has come up yet. It's only been support, and from the words of the Elm Street at Germantown, the Elms at Germantown management, everybody is super excited about being able to come on over on weekends. This is when it's going to be open, just on weekends, and get some fresh produce and baked goods for breakfast. So I think it's going to be mostly positive.
That's great. Is there any concern about a new bus lane impacting it? I see that in the questions.
Yes, I did mention that. The bus rapid transit system does one of the proposals calls for widening of the 355. So as we said before, the cider barrel can't be moved. If they widen it, they'll have to widen it on the other side where there are townhouses right now. So I'm not sure how they could do that. They do have an alternate route, which would go over to the college through the college observation drive by the hospital and the college. So, and we think that is probably a more advantageous route for the community because it does go through by the hospital and the college, and then by the shopping center, the Milestone Center. So I think they would get more people riding on the buses if they hit those three spots. So we appreciate if you would write to your county council and planning board and let them know that you prefer the observation drive route. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Thank you, ladies, so much for a very interesting presentation, and I hope that everybody enjoys the rest of the Montgomery History Conference.